I'm putting in 2 entries. It's my diary. I can do whatever I want. Watching a video about how some Instagram channel that fucking talks all kinds of shit about how women need to submit to men because it's in the Bible and all that stupid shit. And the video is kind of picking it apart and talking shit about it, which is fun. I like that. And it kind of got me thinking about my own religious religious upbringing, my religious experiences, because it's been kind of a weird place, and you're gonna find there's gonna be some overlap on the video about trauma and my mom. Some of that fits together, because when I grew up, a lot of members of the family were very involved in the church. Specifically, it was a church on the hill in Vallejo, and so it was my grandma's sister, their family, hyper involved in the church. That was Aunt Bonnie is what her name was. She sang in the choir. Her daughter, my cousin Jenny, would have been like my mom's cousin. I can never remember, but she sang, beautiful singing voices. My grandma sang in the church, and then Aunt Bonnie's husband, Uncle Steve, I always call him Uncle Stevie, he was really involved in it. He ran sound for them. And yeah, they were super duper involved in the church. And it's weird to think about sometimes, because I have a lot of interestingly good memories about some of those things. Every year they would put on 2 productions. They put on one around Christmas called the Singing Christmas Tree, and another one around Easter called the Singing Cross. For a long time, through a lot of my childhood, every year I would go see the Singing Christmas Tree, because it would be it would be like some play that they wrote. It'd be a lot of Christian overtones and a whole lot of singing, and the singing was beautiful. Because that's the thing, and yes, it was a white church. It wasn't like one of these dope black churches that has the really, really fun singing. I didn't get to go to that, but still beautiful music, beautiful singing, lots of hymns, lots of whatever, and so those were fun, those were cool, but they also were kind of shitty people. And as a kid, I couldn't identify why I had a problem with them and how they were about religion, how they were as people, but I identified that there was a problem. And it wasn't until I was late middle high school when I started exploring religion a lot more where I actually could put a finger on it. What it came down to is the same thing that happens with a lot of religious stuff, is that a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of quoting stuff in the Bible and then not following it. And I think part of what made me realize it was so bad was that my stepdad, he was raised Jehovah's Witness. Grandpa Callista was OG fucking spare the rod, spoil the child. One of his little hobbies was he would go to other churches, listen to them preach, and to show them in their own Bible where they were wrong. That type of stuff. And it was, and so my dad did not raise me to be religious. He, I'm going to call him my dad. It's my stepdad. My dad, he very much was kind of black sheep as well, like metalhead, Navy, whatever, he found his own path through, and he was never religious, but he very much upheld a lot of the ideas of trying to be a virtuous person, trying to be a good person, trying to leave the world better than you found it. I think an accurate way to describe it would be that he believed, I don't know, I may touch base and see how he feels about it, but basically what I can remember of a child, he believes in a God. I don't think he necessarily agrees with a lot of God's decisions. And, because we would have kind of the talks about, like, you know, if God is there and God's doing this stuff, why are these bad things happening? Why do bad things happen to people who don't deserve them? How is it part of God's plan to send a fucking typhoon through a fucking, you know, through some island in Japan? How is it part of God's plan to have, you know, thousands of children starving in Africa? Like, you know, explain God's plan. And I don't know, like, his thing was a lot of like the consistency of it, because he grew up with a dad who very much, you know, lived by the word and died by the word, right? Like, that was his thing, and it was always about, you know, not preaching something you don't follow. And so that was an issue that my dad had with that side of the family, is that there was so much hypocrisy. There was a whole lot of them, like, you know, saying, oh, the scriptures say this, and they live completely differently. And so, like, you know, that, and then I think the other thing too, and kind of touches back on the whole thing of my mom, is that, like, you know, for people who talked about, you know, helping those who are less fortunate than yourself, where was all that help at? Where is that safety at? You know, I mean, I don't want to do the thing everyone else does of, like, you know, if God was really there, how come he didn't save me from my mom? But I mean, if these people were really God-fearing people, why didn't they try to step in and do something? If these people were really all about, you know, like, adhering to God's will about, you know, protecting the weak and, you know, protecting children, where were they when I was getting beaten, right? And so, yeah, like I said, it took me a while to be able to put rational words to the emotions, but they were there. Like, you know, the raw thoughts were there. And so, you know, middle school, I started looking really, maybe started late elementary school. Basically, you know, as we started getting the internet, and especially as I started getting the ability to be able to, like, study stuff on my own, is when I started really, like, exploring. Like, read through the entire Bible. Actually, oddly enough, I want to say it was the Bible that my Uncle Stevie gave me. Ran through the entire Bible. And noticed all the hypocrisy and all the back and forth in the Bible itself. Like, you know, yes, if you abstract it, you can find a lot of good stuff in there. But, like, you have to abstract it pretty heavily. And there's a lot of bad shit in there, too. And so I was like, okay, cool. I see what this is about. I see what's going on. And I think the other thing I was always looking at, too, is how are the people who follow this religion, right? How are, like, you know, like, because for me, like, there's the religious texts, there's the religious lessons, and there's how those of the faith conduct themselves. And a unifying theme I found through a lot of different, like, versions of Christianity, through a lot of different, like, you know, through a lot of different other religions, is that there's a whole lot of, our texts say this, but we actually only do this. I think, like, as I'm thinking back on it, even in elementary school, I had a couple of friends who I would, like, stay the night at their house, and it would be like, oh, cool, if you're going to stay the night with us Saturday night, Sunday you got to go to church with us. And so I went to a lot of church stuff in elementary school, and it was kind of like, whatever. You know, I was respectful. You know, I would, you know, wouldn't say much, wouldn't do much, just kind of be there, follow along. Didn't believe in any of it, but I wanted to spend time with my friends. I was a child. But yeah, middle school, I start really looking at religion. Checked a bunch of different versions of Christianity. Looked at Judaism. Wasn't for me. Looked into looked into Muslim Islam, and didn't read through the whole text, but read through a little bit of it, and I was like, okay, cool. You know, probably a good thing I didn't go there, given that, you know, that was pretty close to 9/11, and I certainly didn't want to be the white guy holding the Muslim bag on 9/11. Neither here nor there, but yeah, looked into a bunch of that stuff. The one that was interesting was in my hometown. There was a Sikh temple. Was it S-I-K-H? Yeah, a Sikh temple, and those dudes were fucking cool. Like, they almost won me over. Like, I wanted to learn a lot more about them because they were super chill, they were super nice, and everything that they said they were about, they were actually about. Like, they were fucking pillars of the community. They, you know, they're the type of place to open up their doors to anyone, and open their doors to me. I came in there as this, you know, 12-year-old, you know, to 12-year-old child going, hey, I feel like I don't have a religion. I feel like I don't have a place or a purpose, and I'm trying to learn. And they went, okay, cool. Come on in. Let's talk. Super cool people. Super dope people. So much respect for them. I think the big thing that kind of, you know, that probably ruined that was that, you know, by the time I went there, I had already found the religion I ended up going to, which was Satanism. And so I hit Satanism, and that resonated a lot. Hit the Sikh temple, and they were dope, but I was like, ooh, I'm kind of feeling this over here. And, like, it's funny, too, because everybody always thought that, oh, I picked Satanism because it's edgy, and there's a little bit of that in there. You know, that was certainly a lot of fun to be the fucking... I was already the little metalhead kid, so it made sense that I would... It continued that. I was already listening to Slayer at that point because my dad was into thrash metal and everything. But I think the bigger thing of it is that, like, because, like, the form of Satanism I found is through the Satanic Temple, and they're really big on being good people in spite of a bad world. Sometimes in opposition to a bad world. So, like, you know, a big part of their thing is that, like, they don't condone, like, you know, harming other things. They don't condone violence. They don't condone rape. There's actually, one of the tenets is, one's body is inviolable and subject to one's own will alone. You are not allowed to impede on someone else's body without their permission. And then, like, a bigger part of it, though, is that it's really built around the ideas of self-reliance and self-actualization. Like, so basically, because, like, here's the thing, is that, like, with normal Christianity, everything is built on your working for the glory of God. You are, you know, and you are deferring to God's judgment, God's plan, God's rules, right? And it's everything that you do or don't do is because of God's commandments on man, and you know, and then subsequently the teachings of the religious leaders who claim that they are listening to God's word personified through the Bible. Y'all know how it works. With Satanism, it's, you know, the way I've described it to people is that you have to figure out who you want to be and how you want to be perceived, and then you take the steps to make that happen. So, you know, it's all about, like, self-expression and, you know, in self-indulgence in a lot of cases, especially because, like, the first forms of Satanism was meant to be, you know, like, mirror, like, if you imagine, like, the negative print of Catholicism, where it's like, you know, they defer to God, we defer to ourselves. They repress themselves, we express ourselves. We allow ourselves to experience everything. We allow ourselves to have everything. And so, and so that was kind of where it started. And then where you have places like the Satanic Temple, is they kind of challenge you to take it further. Where it's like, yeah, cool. Every man is his own God. And so, like, my responsibility is to myself, but my responsibility is to be the best self I can be. And I'm not constrained by the morality of Bronze Age men who wrote down texts that they claim were, that they claimed they either fully experienced or they claimed was given to them by God. And so, like, it really connected to me in a way, because it's like, with Satanism, the power is in the self. And for a kid who felt like he had no power, for a kid who felt like he had no identity, for a kid who felt like his entire existence was to be the punching bag of a criminally young mother who didn't know how to love a child, at least not me. Having something where it's like, hey, the power is yours, the power is in you, and all you have to do is grab it and wield it. That's strong as fuck. Like, most people turn to religion when they hit a point in their lives where they feel like they need to tap into a power beyond themselves, whether it's the power of God and Christ to help you through stuff or whatever. And for me, tapping into that power was tapping into the power in myself. And so it gave me the permission to exert my own will and to exert my own autonomy. Like, self-autonomy, like, bodily autonomy is a massive thing in Satanism. Like, that's one of the most important things, is that, we all have our individual rights to be who exactly we want to be, to say what we want to say, to do what we want to do. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's a very, like, old school libertarian feel to it, where it's like, yes, we all have, like, I have the right to do whatever I want. And that does not exempt me from the consequences of it, but it exempts me from, having to be like, ooh, someone else is going to tell me I can't do something, so I'm not allowed to do it. No, I can do it. I can choose not to, but I have the choice to do it and deal with whatever consequences that it may be. Including what they call the right to offend. I can say some sideways shit if I want to. I mean, also with that, there's kind of an expectation that, if someone else feels like they want to have it out with me, I mean, it may be what it is. But for me, I took it as a challenge to better myself. I wanted to be seen as an independent person who was a good person and who, was the master of myself. And so I took that as a challenge. I wanted to be a good person. So I started trying to be a good person. Am I perfect? Fuck no. I want to be independent, independent thinker, a free thinker. I'd like to believe I am. Certainly have some extreme ideas, but who doesn't? And like I said, it was just built around that type of stuff. And I think that's kind of what gave me... So it gave me the ability to survive through my mom's abuse. And then it's also what's given me the ability to really learn about myself now. Because one of the things I developed in my early years of Satanism was being able to kind of question, why am I feeling this way? What does this mean about me? And what does this mean about how I'm perceived? And so that helps out really well when you go to therapy and you start learning more about yourself, and it starts being a, cool, why do I feel that way? Why do I feel a need to react that way? These are very helpful when that. And so it's made me very cognizant of the self. Made me very, very aware and very like curious about what makes me tick, like what makes this work. And it's not always easy. Like, certainly, being a Satanist, like, it puts me in opposition with a lot of people who hear the name and automatically assume that I'm sacrificing babies. And then there's a lot of people that it's like, it's already bad enough if you're not Christian, but now you're anti-Christian, and it's a whole new thing you have to be ready for. Like, it's not for the faint of heart. And I think the other problem, too, is that a lot of people try to go to Satanism because they want to be edgelords, because they want to be the, I'm evil, and I'm, Dark Knight, and whatever, fucking, like, and people go to it for the wrong, just like people go to any religion for the wrong reasons. And I think the problem, though, is that, like, when people go to Christianity for the wrong reasons, everyone around them goes, ooh, that's not what Christianity is about, dude. Someone goes to Satanism for the wrong reasons, everyone goes, ooh, see, Satanism's so bad. It's a bias. But, like, the funny thing about it, too, is I feel like it's made me a better person than most Christians. For one, I stand on business. If I say I'm about something, I'm about it. And, for better or for worse. I mean, maybe that's an imprint of my dad on me. But it's like, if I say that I'm about something, it is what it is. And then, I think the other problem that happens, too, the other thing that I've noticed with it, too, is that, like, part of being a Satanist is that we don't believe in an afterlife. Because God and Satan aren't real. They're representations. God, Satan is the representation of the ultimate supreme rebel, resisting the influence of the ultimate supreme oppressor. And so, with that too, means that since I don't believe in an afterlife, I'm not worried about getting into heaven or hell. And so that changes how I do things. Because a lot of Christians, like, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like a lot of Christians do good works solely because they are trying to get enough gold stars to get into heaven. They're not going to say that directly, but it's there. And you get them talking long enough, you'll get to it. And it doesn't lessen their works. Like, if they're doing good work, they're doing good work. But it does, to me, it weakens their moral ground on it. Because what's happening is that I'm doing good things because I want to be a good person. And I want to be seen as a good person. They're doing good things because they're expecting a reward at the end of it. And take that as you will, but it's certainly one of those things where I see it, I think about it, and I notice it. And the other thing, too, is that, since I'm not worried about getting into heaven, like, I'm not as worried about making sure other people feel good getting into heaven. Like, I generally don't feel that people, like, kind of like we talked about in the last video, I don't, like, sure, everyone has a right to try to better themselves, but I don't think that we need to coddle everyone else and be like, well, God calls on us to forgive people, so I should forgive people. I don't have to do that. I don't care. I don't care if they get to the afterlife and feel like they never got to properly be forgiven. That's their problem, not mine. Because it stresses independence so much, it also it's what's made it easier for me to cut people out of my life. because I am my own God, I am my own strength. I don't need other people in my life, especially people who are actively making it worse. Like, I don't have those family members where it's like, oh, this family member is terrible, they're a bad person, but we just kind of put up with it because of this. No, I don't have any of those in my own family. I don't deal with that shit. Like, the only people I talk to in my own family is my dad, stepdad, my dad, my little brother, and my uncle, and my aunt and uncle, who are my mom's brother and his partner. Those are the only people I talk to that are in my own family line. And it's nice that those are the only people I'm talking to, because there's not a lot of drama there. Like, my little brother has his own life, he has his own kid. I check in with him from time to time, he's doing okay. My dad's got his own life, he's got other kids, I check in with him from time to time. And then my uncle has his own life, and I check in with him from time to time. You check on him again, actually. Yeah, I think after I get done with this, I may check in on him again, make sure he's still okay. But yeah, I don't have these fucking cousins that are fucking pieces of shit that I have to deal with, or these other aunts and uncles that are fucking terrible people. I'm gonna deal with that, because through my faith, we'll call it faith, through Satanism, I have found the strength in myself to go, I don't need those influences in my life. I don't need those stresses in my life. Part of my journey to being a more complete person, a more self-actualized individual, is to remove those things from my life. And since we're on the topic of afterlife, I mean, I know, like, a lot of people will, do the whole, like, well, what are you going to do if you die and God's real and heaven's real? Okay. It's possible. None of us truly know. None of us truly know. So my theory has always been, if I die and it turns out heaven is real, God is real, I'm up there at the pearly gates, and God looks at, St. Peter at the pearly gates, and they are looking at the deeds of my life, and they go, hey, you did all these good things, but you go to hell because you didn't give God credit. I don't want to go to heaven. Fuck him. He doesn't deserve my worship. And it's what it is. And even beyond that, like where I'm at now with religion's kind of a weird place too, because I still hold my satanic views. I'm still about that business, but I interact with a lot of people who a lot of them are Christian. A lot of my partner's family is very Christian. Maybe Catholic, but they're very of that faith. And it's not caused like actual friction between us, but it certainly is one of those things that comes up every once in a while. Especially because there's a lot of choices they make based on their interpretation of that faith, where I'm like, I disagree with that completely. And so it I don't know, it is what it is. I think about this stuff. Drive around a lot, so that's all I do is think. I think the other thing about it too is that through my childhood, especially through my my high school years, I still spent a lot of time around Christians. Hell, my some of the people I hung out with, like my best friend at the time, he very much was going to youth group all the time, mainly so we could pick up on Christian girls. But so I went to a lot of those youth group things. Most of them were stupid. There was one that was dope. There was one that was called U-Churn, and it was like, how do I put this? It was a youth group built around just being being a third space, being another place the kids can hang out and just be, they can be teenagers. And so, like, because you go to U-Turn, they've got like pool tables there, they've got an arcade machine there, they've got like basketball stuff, they've got like some skate park, like, a couple boxes and like a ramp and a rail, like stuff like that. And it was like the Christian theming was ratcheted down to like a 2 or a 3, and then hey, we just want the youth in our community to have a safe place they can go where, where they could just be good kids. They're not out running the streets, they're not getting shot, they're not gang banging, they're not drug dealing, they're just hanging out and being teenagers in a safe space. And that place was fucking cool. That place was awesome. They always thought I was interesting, because at that point I was very firmly a Satanist. And the head pastor, I can never remember his name, but he was just, basically, his mentality of it was like, okay, cool, you still want to hang out? And there would be times where he would have other kids who would come and talk to me because they were like unsure about their faith and unsure about where they stood and what they felt, and why don't you go talk to Eddie? Go pick his brain a little bit, get an alternate perspective. And it was always cool. It was always a trip. And then there was a lot of bands I listened to that ended up being Christian bands. So some were obvious, some weren't, like POD, Blindside, stuff like that. Like stuff that I was listening to that was obviously Christian rock, but it was like of that new metal era, so it was still like just really good, really, just tight songwriting, a lot of fun. And I feel like, essentially, because a lot of like the heavier Christian rock of that time, like, like the Christian rock, Christian new metal, Christian grunge, was really built around like the idea of finding faith and that crisis of faith, and like, because it's not like the super like late career Jars of Clay, like I want to fall in love with Jesus. It was that stuff of being like, I want to believe, I want to have this faith, but I'm having trouble getting there. And as much as I don't want to have that faith in Christ, I 100% understand that idea of, I feel like I'm lost, and I want to find, I want to find something. Jeez, 33 minutes already. Fuck it, I don't care. It's my journal. No one else watches these anyway, so y'all can suck it. Yeah, so I mean, it's, kind of, and where I'm at with it now is that I still have that reliance of self. I still have that sense of self and that sense of faith, but it's tempered. It's different. It's like I've become more militant in how I feel about stuff, but less aggressively militant about where I stand in faith, and in being a Satanist, and in my viewpoints around that. And maybe it's because I don't know, I don't hang out with other Satanists, so I don't know. Just like I don't hang out with other plumbers and tradespeople. I hate it. I want to hang out with people who have different ideas, different backgrounds, different mentalities than me. I don't want to hang out with people who are just like me. I will say too, like, I think one of the bad things Satanism did for me, and it's because I'm also a person of extremes, I always I go to the logical conclusion and start there and take it further, is that need for isolation and like that need for individuality made it where I was willing to cut off people who maybe didn't need to be cut off. Like, I was hyper aggressive in how, in how much in how willing I was to just get rid of people in my life. Like, I out of all the people I went to high school with, I cut most of them out almost right after high school. And, you know, within the first 5 years of being out of high school, I had 99% of the friends that I had and people I talked to have been completely excised from my life. I think now there is 2 people I interact with on a loose basis who I knew from my childhood. And yeah, I don't know. Like maybe like 1 or 2 people who I, you know, and like one person from my early adulthood who I still interact with. I've cut everyone else out, for better or for worse. I don't think I'm going to publish this video. I think I'm rambling on for too long about shit that doesn't matter, and I think these people can't fucking drive, and I hope this cop pulls you over and gives you guys tickets for being shitty drivers. Fuck you, cop. Fuck you. I don't know how I'm going to do this.